It was the laugh that did it. Not a scream. Not a sob. Not a confession or a caught text or some dramatic standoff in the rain. Just a laugh. Her laugh. From the other side of the door. You know the one. Sharp, effortless, that little snort at the end she only does when she's not thinking about how she sounds. A real laugh. The kind she used to say for those stupid sitcoms we used to watch at night, tangled in a blanket on the floor because the couch felt too formal. But this time, it wasn't for me. I wasn't even supposed to be home. See, my flight got canceled. Chicago storms, apparently. I was supposed to be gone until Sunday. I never told her I was coming back Friday night. I thought it'd be a nice surprise. We'd order Chinese, maybe actually talk for once. I'd even bought that lemon-scented candle she weirdly liked that I used to mock her for. But when I stepped onto our porch, suitcase in hand, I heard that laugh. Her laugh. Followed by a man's voice I didn't recognize, low and casual. And that's when my stomach turned. I didn't open the door. I didn't knock. I didn't even move. I just stood there like a scarecrow while time folded in on itself. Their voices floated through the wall, muffled, relaxed, intimate. Someone poured something into a glass. She made a joke about taking the edge off. He called her firecracker. Firecracker. I hadn't called her that since 2018. I wish I could tell you I burst in there, demanded answers, made a scene. But I didn't. I just stepped backward, off the porch, 1 foot at a time like I was defusing a bomb. My hands were numb. My throat was dry. I walked 3 blocks to a gas station, sat in the car wash line with the engine off, and stared at my reflection in the windshield. I didn't cry. I didn't think. I just felt hollow, like something had been scooped out and replaced with fog. Eventually, I drove to an old coworker's place, Greg. He still had the futon from college and a fridge full of sad beer. I crashed there that night, staring at the ceiling tiles that looked like water-damaged crossword puzzles. And I kept thinking, who was that man in my kitchen? Why was she laughing like that? How long has she been saving that version of herself for someone else? The next day, I texted her, told her the truth, said my flight got canceled and I didn't want to interrupt whatever was going on. I didn't accuse. I didn't beg. I didn't say her name once. She wrote back, wait, you were here? I wasn't expecting you till Sunday. There's nothing going on, Lowell. Please come home. I didn't, because I already knew. She lied that night, and I walked away without saying a word. I thought I was done with her. I really did. But 3 nights later, she showed up at Greg's apartment, pale, trembling, and holding a flash drive. She handed it to me like it was cursed, and all she said was, it's not what you think. It's worse. But you deserve to know. And that's when the unraveling truly began. What was on that drive changed everything. But I'll get to that. This was just the laugh that started it all. I didn't touch the flash drive that night. I didn't even move after she left. She hadn't tried to come in. Just rang Greg's buzzer, waited until I appeared at the top of the stairs in that old hoodie I hadn't washed in days, and handed it to me with this strange stillness in her face. No tears. No guilt. Just a kind of exhausted surrender, like someone delivering a message that was never meant to be read aloud. I sat on the edge of Greg's futon for hours, that tiny silver drive sitting on the coffee table like it might explode. Greg was asleep in his bedroom. I could hear his snoring, steady, reliable, the kind of thing I used to associate with peace. But my peace had been cracked wide open. Every time I looked at that drive, it whispered something I wasn't ready to hear. By 3 a.m., I gave in. Greg's old laptop was buried in a drawer under expired batteries and 2 burnt-out candles. The screen flickered to life like it was offended at being touched. I plugged the drive in with trembling fingers, half expecting some dramatic video to autoplay. It didn't. There were just 3 files. No folder names. No dates. Just watchme.mov. Read_this.txt. Recording_04.wave. I clicked the text file first. Call me cowardly, but I couldn't go straight into a video. Not yet. The text was only 3 lines. You were never the problem, Lowell. I just didn't know how to stop once it started. This is all of it. No more lies. I stared at that sentence like it was written in another language. Not a confession. Not an apology. Just a quiet defeat. The kind that leaves no room for arguing. I moved to the audio file next. The voice that filled the room was hers. Whispering, shaky, clearly recorded on a phone. At first, it was just sobbing. Then words, scattered between breaths. I lied to him. Every time he asked, I lied. Even when he gave me the out, I still lied. I told myself it was temporary, that I'd stop. But then Paxton started talking about leaving his wife, and suddenly I didn't know what I wanted. I hate myself for dragging Lowell into this. He deserves better. He's always deserved better. I paused it. My heart was pounding so loud it felt like it was echoing off the walls. Paxton. So it was him. The gym guy. Her client. That smug, overconfident voice I'd heard through our door wasn't just a random flirtation. He was the blueprint behind every late meeting, every fake phone call, every "you're being paranoid" deflection. Still, I hadn't cried. That scared me more than anything. I just sat there, staring at the screen, listening to a version of Brenna I didn't know. One that could dissect me so casually in whispers. Finally, I opened the video. It was filmed in our kitchen. My kitchen. The one with the tiny crack in the tile near the fridge and the spice rack I installed crooked on a Sunday afternoon while she laughed and pretended to help. In the video, Brenna was sitting across from Paxton. They weren't touching, but it was intimate in a way that made my skin crawl. She was in one of my t-shirts. He had a glass of wine. The angle was strange, like the camera had been propped on the counter and forgotten, except it hadn't been forgotten. Someone had wanted this recorded. And then, mid-conversation, Paxton leaned in and said, "When are you going to tell him? I'm tired of playing the ghost. You said you'd talk to him after New Year's." She looked down, biting her lip. "I know. He's so soft. He'll break." That did it. I paused the video, slammed the lid of the laptop shut and stood up, the room spinning. Soft. That was the word she chose. Not kind. Not loyal. Not even boring. Just soft. Like I was some half-baked loaf of bread she could mold or toss whenever it suited her mood. And maybe she was right. Because I didn't rage. I didn't call her. I didn't storm over and demand closure. I just stood in Greg's dark apartment, feeling like a hologram of myself, while the truth hung in the air like smoke. I had left the night she lied. I had walked into the storm thinking I was finished, that I had taken all the hits there were to take. But no, that flash drive proved otherwise. And what I didn't realize yet, what I couldn't have possibly imagined, was that this wasn't the bottom. There was still something deeper coming. A detail I hadn't seen. A twist buried beneath the pain. And when I found it, it changed everything. I didn't sleep. Not even for a minute. I spent the night staring at that closed laptop like it was some cursed relic, something that should have been buried instead of played. My ears still echoed with her voice. "He's so soft. He'll break." I kept hearing it over and over, like the universe was daring me to prove her wrong. Greg had to leave for work around 6 a.m. He offered me coffee, mumbled something about taking all the time I needed, and gave me this look like he didn't know what to say. I didn't blame him. What do you say to a man who just watched the floor give out from under his marriage? Once he was gone, the apartment was dead quiet. I opened the laptop again, not because I wanted to, but because some part of me needed to. I didn't want to leave anything unfinished. That video haunted me, but something about the angle, the way it was recorded, it didn't feel random. Like maybe there was more I wasn't seeing. So I went back in. I rewound the video and paused it frame by frame, scanning the kitchen background like a detective. And that's when I saw it. A blinking light. Faint. Red. Reflected in the microwave door. A separate camera. They weren't just being recorded. They were recording themselves. From multiple angles. Why? I scoured the flash drive again, hoping I missed something. No hidden folders. No buried files. Just the 3 I'd already opened. Unless. I unplugged the drive and reconnected it, this time checking the hidden files through command prompt. That's when a 4th file appeared. storage_log_07.aac. It was an audio recording. No timestamp. Just a name that sounded like it had been mislabeled or intentionally obscured. I hesitated. My thumb hovered over the play button longer than I wanted to admit. And then I clicked it. At first, static. Then the sound of a door opening, voices moving. The recording was longer than the other one, over 20 minutes. And what I heard next wasn't a confession or a fight. It was planning. Literal planning. Brenna's voice. "Okay, so if we do this right, I can make it seem like Lowell stepped out early. Like he couldn't handle it. You just need to be gone before sunrise. He won't ask questions. He's not wired like that." Paxton laughs. "You really think he'll just let go that easy?" Brenna. "He lets go of everything. That's what he does. He retreats. He rewrites the story in his head so it hurts less." Paxton. "And if he finds out?" Brenna. "Then I'll cry. Say I was confused. He'll forgive me. He always does." I stopped breathing. This wasn't an affair. This was a setup. She wasn't just cheating. She was managing me, predicting me like I was some broken algorithm she'd debugged years ago. She knew I wouldn't fight. She counted on it. And she wasn't wrong. Not until now. I sat there gripping the arm of the futon, my nails digging into the cheap fabric. There was no rage. No yelling. Just something worse. Something cold and final settling in my chest. This wasn't about love lost. This was about who I'd been to her all this time. Not a husband. Not a partner. A placeholder. A stepping stone. A comfort she used to feel superior. And now, I had proof of it. I transferred the hidden audio to a secure folder on the cloud. Not because I wanted revenge, at least not yet, but because for the first time in years, I realized I couldn't trust a single word she said. I needed insurance. Evidence. Something real. Because if she could fabricate this version of me to Paxton, she could do it to anyone. I didn't leave the apartment that day. I didn't eat. I barely blinked. And then, around sunset, she called. Not a text. A call. I let it ring twice before answering. Her voice was soft, the same voice she used to use when asking for favors. Lowell. I don't know if you listen to everything, but I want to talk. Not argue. Just talk. I said nothing. She continued. There are things you don't understand. It wasn't supposed to go this far. Paxton, he wasn't supposed to. God, just please meet me. I'll explain everything. She sounded like she was crying. But all I could think about was that line. He lets go of everything. That's what he does. So I agreed to meet. Not because I wanted closure, but because I was done letting go. And this time, I was finally ready to listen with both eyes open. She picked the place. A quiet diner on the east side of town called Dallas. The kind of place where the booths are cracked, the coffee is bitter, and everyone who walks in knows someone who's been going there since '86. It's open late, but never really busy. That's probably why she chose it. Neutral ground. Public enough to prevent a meltdown. Private enough to say things she didn't want to say at home. I arrived 10 minutes early. Sat in the back booth facing the door, my back pressed against the faux leather like I was anchoring myself there. I didn't order anything. Just stared at the menu, letting my thoughts bounce off the laminated photos of pancakes and corned beef hash. There was a chip on the sugar dispenser. A flickering light above the soda machine. Some couple across the room whispering too loudly about their grandkid. Normal life. Just ticking on. Meanwhile, my world was wrapped in static. Then she walked in. Brenna looked composed. That was the first red flag. Hair pulled into a neat braid, makeup flawless, jacket zipped halfway. Not a trace of the woman from the recording, the one whispering about manipulation, the one who planned my erasure like she was scheduling a haircut. She smiled, small and uncertain, and slid into the booth across from me. Thanks for coming, she said. I didn't respond. Just nodded once, slow and flat. She fiddled with her sleeve. You look tired. I blinked once. Twice. Then said, let's skip the small talk. You brought me here. So talk. Her mouth twitched like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. Instead, she reached into her bag and pulled out a single sheet of paper. No envelope. No folder. Just one page, folded in half. She pushed it toward me, and I unfolded it. It was a pregnancy test. Positive. For a moment, the room went still. I could hear the old wall clock behind the counter. The clink of dishes. The buzz of that flickering light. I looked at her. Is it mine? That was the only question I could form. Her eyes welled with tears. I don't know. I stared at her for a long, stretched-out second. Like my brain had to triple-check what it just heard. You don't know, I repeated. I didn't sleep with Paxton until after Christmas, she whispered. And, well, you and I on New Year's Eve. I did remember. Barely. We'd had too much champagne. One of those strange, distant nights where it felt like we were trying to pretend things weren't falling apart. She'd kissed me hard, like she was pulling something out of me. Then she cried in the middle of it and blamed the wine. Now that moment was being repackaged as Exhibit A. She wiped her eyes. I didn't want you to find out this way. I thought I had time to it. To do what? I cut in, my voice barely above a whisper. To pick whose life you wanted to destroy first? She flinched like I'd hit her. But I didn't apologize. Brenna took a shaky breath. Paxton doesn't know about any of it. He thinks I'm still figuring things out. I laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because the insanity of it all just cracked open in me like a broken dam. So let me get this straight. You cheated, lied, tried to spin it, got pregnant, and now you're here, what, asking for a second chance? A DNA test? What exactly do you want from me? She didn't answer, just stared at her coffee cup like it had something wiser to say. I leaned in, eyes locked on hers. You planned this, Brenna. All of it. I heard you. He lets go of everything. Those were your words. You expected me to vanish quietly, like I always do. She shook her head. No, I didn't expect. I didn't think you'd listen to the whole thing. There it was. The slip. The confirmation that everything I heard, every whispered plan, every careful manipulation was real. I listened, I said. And I'm still listening. So go on. Finish it. Brenna hesitated, then whispered something I never expected to hear. It wasn't supposed to be you. That hit harder than I thought it would. What does that mean? She wiped her eyes, her voice cracking. Paxton, he's not the first. Everything in me went cold. The diner faded into background noise. That couple. The clock. All of it blurred. I thought I could fix it, she continued. That if I just moved forward, did better, you'd never have to know. But it kept happening. And I kept choosing people who made me feel something because I couldn't feel anything with you anymore. Not because you're bad. Because I'm broken. I stood. Slowly. Hands trembling at my sides. I don't care why, I said. You don't get to break me down and call it healing. You don't get to decide how much truth I can survive. She stood too, panic in her voice. What about the baby? What if it's yours? I looked her dead in the eyes. Then it'll be born into a truth you spent years avoiding. But I won't be the fool raising lies anymore. And with that, I walked out of the diner. The truth had changed everything, but not in the way she thought it would. Not in the way I thought it would, either. Because what came next wasn't forgiveness. It was something else entirely. I don't know how I kept walking after I left that diner. My legs felt like they didn't belong to me, like my body was carrying my heart somewhere it didn't want to go. The streets were wet from a light rain that hadn't fully stopped, and every time my shoes hit a puddle, I barely noticed. I just kept moving, past shuttered storefronts and glowing windows, past memories that suddenly felt like fiction. I didn't go back to Greg's. I couldn't look him in the eyes and explain why I met with her. I didn't want his sympathy. I didn't want anyone's. I walked into the only place I knew would be open that late, the 24-hour laundromat off Marlowe Street. It smelled like detergent and old quarters, and the vending machine had a flickering light that buzzed above the row of empty plastic chairs. I sat in the back, hands clenched together, Brenna's words ringing in my ears like a melody written to haunt me. It wasn't supposed to be you. She hadn't just cheated. She hadn't just lied. She had planned around the idea that I would disappear easily. And now she was telling me that I was collateral damage in some storm she never tried to stop. But as I sat there, staring at a dryer spinning someone else's life around in circles, I kept thinking about the baby. Not because I felt hopeful. Not because I wanted a second chance at building something. But because if there was even a small chance that child was mine, then I needed clarity. I needed something true. I don't know what made me do it, but I took out my phone and scrolled through old contacts. And that's when I saw the name I hadn't seen in years. Jonas Levant. Jonas wasn't a friend. Not exactly. He was Brenna's ex. The one before me. The one she never really talked about, except to say he'd hurt her badly. I remember early on, she told me he was controlling. Secretive. That he cheated and played mind games. I hated the guy without ever meeting him. She painted him like the monster that made her who she was when I found her, cautious, guarded, impossible to fully know. But now I wasn't so sure. I found him on Facebook under a different last name. He'd gotten married, had a kid, lived 2 states away. His inbox was open. I stared at the blinking cursor, unsure what to say. Then I typed, "You don't know me. My name's Lowell. I'm Brenna's husband. Or was. I need to ask you something. Did she ever record you without you knowing?" I didn't expect a reply, but I sent it anyway. Then I sat there for another hour, mind unraveling like cheap thread, until my phone buzzed. It was Jonas. Yeah, she did. More than once. Why are you asking? That was it. Just 3 lines. But it landed like a hammer to the chest. I asked him if she ever manipulated things, used private conversations against him, if she ever orchestrated situations to look a certain way. He replied almost instantly, "Brenna is the most convincing liar I've ever met. I used to think I was the crazy one. But no matter what happened, she'd always have a version of the story that made her look like the victim." I left the day I found a file on her laptop labeled insurance. It had recordings of me saying stuff out of context. Stuff she could use to flip everything on me. I don't know what she's done to you, man. But if you're asking me whether she knows exactly what she's doing, yes. She always has. I sat there in silence. Not just because it confirmed everything I'd already begun to suspect, but because it meant what I'd seen, what I'd heard. None of it was accidental. None of it came from a place of desperation or confusion. It was strategy. And that meant the pregnancy test, the meeting, even the apology, might not have been about regret. They might have been about timing. I opened the hidden audio file again, this time listening with a sharper ear. There, tucked into the background, I heard something I missed before. A calendar reminder chime. And Paxton saying, "You sure he's leaving for the conference that week?" Conference. I hadn't been on a conference in years. That trip I was supposed to take, the one that got canceled due to the storm, was something she suggested I go on. Said I needed a change of scenery. Told me she'd handle everything while I was away. It wasn't just an affair. It was a scheduled performance. And I almost missed the curtain call. The next morning, I checked myself into a cheap motel using cash. I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to deal with lawyers. Not yet. I needed time. And then, at 10:43 a.m., I got another message. Not from Brenna. Not from Jonas. From someone I didn't recognize. A burner number. "You don't know me. But you're not the only one she's done this to. Check your front porch. I left something you need to see." I froze. Because that meant someone else knew. Someone else had seen behind the curtain. And whatever they left me might finally explain why Brenna was always 3 steps ahead. I should have ignored the message. Every part of me screamed not to go back there, not to set foot on the porch of that house again. Not after what I'd learned, not after hearing my own marriage deconstructed and rehearsed like a business pitch. But curiosity, no, something deeper, something darker, pushed me forward. Maybe I needed to know how deep it really went. Maybe some part of me thought that if I could see the full design, I'd stop feeling like I was the one who broke it all. I waited until dusk. I parked 4 houses down from mine and approached through the side alley like a coward. Like a thief. The yard looked the same. The porch light was already on. The blinds were drawn, the living room dark. There, on the front step, was a cardboard box. No label. No markings. Taped shut, but hastily. A strip of black duct tape and a flap slightly peeled back from the wind. I snatched it and left as quickly as I arrived. Back in the motel, I placed the box on the table like it was something alive. I circled it. Waited. Then finally pulled the tape off. Inside was a Ziploc bag full of USB drives. 11 of them. All different colors. No labels. No dates. No names. There was a note, scribbled in sharp, rushed handwriting. "I couldn't carry this anymore. If she finds out, I'm gone." These were backups. She kept them all cataloged, even. You were never her first. Just the one who almost noticed. No name. No explanation. I stared at those drives like they were detonators. What kind of person needed 11 backups of anything, unless they weren't just keeping memories, but building leverage? I chose the red one first. Plugged it into the motel's aging laptop. There were folders. One labeled Novak_2018. Another called Sharma. A third named Sloan_room2_CM. These weren't mine. These were other men. Other lives. Videos. Clips. Voice memos. Recordings of arguments. Laughter. Tears. I clicked one at random. Sloan_room2_cam. The feed was grainy, but I saw her, Brenna, wearing an oversized sweatshirt, curled on a bed with a man I didn't recognize. She was playing with his hair, laughing softly, whispering something I couldn't hear. Then her tone shifted. "You said your wife doesn't suspect anything, right?" The man groaned. "She thinks I'm working overtime." "I always say that." Brenna smiled and leaned in. "Well, keep telling her that. Because I don't plan on being the one caught." The file ended mid-laugh. I closed the window and sat in silence. My hands were shaking again, but not from shock. This time it was fury. Not just at her, but at myself. How many times had I ignored the signs? How many times had I made excuses for her emotional distance or sudden mood shifts? I opened Novak_2018. This one was just audio. A phone call. A man, Novak, was practically begging her. He was crying. "Just tell me the truth, Brenna. I need to know. Was I ever anything to you, or was I just convenient?" And then her voice, steady and clinical, like she was reading from a script. "You were a test. You passed. Then you failed. I needed something else." I paused it. A test. She called him a test. Was I one too? Suddenly, a wave of nausea hit me. I rushed to the bathroom and vomited, my knees buckling against the cold tile. Everything felt wrong, my skin, my name, my sense of time. I splashed water on my face, staring at the mirror like I didn't recognize the man behind the glass. I had gone from husband to data point, a controlled experiment in emotional compliance. I spent the entire night going through the rest of the drives. Every file painted a new picture of a woman I never knew existed. One who collected people like insurance policies, who recorded breakdowns, confessions, and secret affairs with the precision of someone archiving a project, not because she wanted to remember, but because she wanted to use. And every file confirmed one awful truth. I was not the first, but I was the longest, the most stable, the most obedient, the most willing to believe love looked like survival. Around 5 a.m., I found one last folder on the purple drive, labeled failsafe. Inside was a single file, to_b_used_if_things_crack.mov. I clicked it. It was Brenna, sitting alone. No makeup, hair pulled back, eyes locked on the camera. She said, "If you're watching this, I guess things didn't work out. And before you twist the whole thing into some betrayal story, remember, you were always the one with the choice. You chose not to ask questions. You chose silence every time I pulled away. You chose comfort over truth. So if you're hurting now, maybe ask yourself why you made it so easy for me." The screen went black. I stared at it for what felt like hours. She had recorded a contingency speech, a built-in escape narrative, and she was right about one thing. I did make it easy, but now I had everything. The truth, the history, the pattern, and for the first time, she didn't know what I was going to do next. By the next morning, everything inside me felt scorched. My hands were trembling from too much coffee and too little sleep, and my chest buzzed with a kind of electricity I didn't recognize. Not rage exactly, rage was loud. This was quieter. A slow, focused fire. The kind that reshapes landscapes, not buildings. The kind that waits. I didn't go to work. I didn't call Greg. I didn't even turn on the motel TV to drown out the thoughts. I just sat on the edge of the bed, those 11 USB drives now scattered across the blanket like twisted souvenirs of a marriage that had never actually existed the way I believed it had. It wasn't until nearly noon that I got the next message. Unknown number. "You've seen what you needed to. Now meet me. I have one more piece. After this, you'll understand everything." The text was followed by an address I didn't recognize, just an intersection on the north side of town, near an abandoned strip mall I hadn't been to in years. No name. No reason. I didn't even hesitate. I got in the car and drove. The location turned out to be a crumbling parking lot beside a boarded-up nail salon. The wind kicked dust into lazy spirals, and a faded banner flapped against rusted poles. No cars. No sign of life. Then a sedan pulled in across from me. Gray. Tinted windows. The kind of car you forget 2 seconds after seeing it. A man stepped out. He looked to be in his mid-40s. Lean. Average in every way except for his eyes. His eyes didn't match the rest of him. They were sharp, focused, the kind of eyes that have watched too much and said too little. "You're Lowell?" he asked. I nodded. He reached into his coat pocket and handed me a small envelope. Yellowed edges. Folded tight. No stamp. No name. "She did the same thing to me," he said. "Different method. Same damage. I tried going to the police once. They said there's no crime in emotional manipulation. Said I should move on. But I couldn't. Not until I saw what she did to you. I wanted to ask him who he was, how he knew her, how long it had gone on. But before I could open my mouth, he raised a hand. No questions. What you're holding is a copy of a legal agreement. One she made me sign. You'll want to read it closely, especially the parts in the margins." And then he got back into his car and drove off. I stood there in the wind, the envelope crinkling in my hand like a fragile truth. Back at the motel, I unfolded the document. My hands started shaking again as I scanned the title. Mutual Severance Agreement, Private and Undisclosable. Her name was on it, and so was his. It was dated 4 years ago. It outlined a set of conditions: mutual silence, the return of any recorded material, a clause preventing either party from contacting employers or family. It was written not like a breakup agreement, but like a business deal. Like they'd been partners in something that collapsed and had to be professionally buried. But it was the handwritten notes in the margins that made my blood run cold. Things like, if he tries to expose, shift narrative to mental instability. Use apology as a diffuser, not admission. Always retain one master copy. At the bottom, under the witness line, there was a third signature. Someone I knew. Allison Rourke. Brenna's best friend. Our wedding photographer. The one who stayed at our place for a week after her surgery. The one who helped Brenna pick out our bed frame. The one I once confided in after a fight because I thought she was neutral. I read it 3 times. 4. And suddenly, pieces snapped into place. Allison had always known when to check in, when to push me to give Brenna space, when to suggest not reading into things. She was the voice in the background nudging me gently towards silence. She hadn't been neutral. She'd been in on it. I needed air. I stumbled out of the motel like it was on fire, gasping like I'd been underwater too long. The truth wasn't just painful now, it was radioactive. It spread to every memory, every face, every kind word I'd been offered during the worst moments. All of it tainted, rewritten. Back inside, I looked again at the margins. One note caught my eye. If primary target becomes unstable, initiate pivot, introduce guilt mechanism. Pregnancy. Fear. Frame reset. Pregnancy. It wasn't just a consequence. It was a fallback. A strategy. And I was the primary target. I sat on the edge of the bed for what felt like hours, holding that paper like it might bite me. Every cell in my body ached to expose her, to show the world what she really was. But that document reminded me of the danger. She wasn't careless. She prepared. And now, I needed to be just as careful. Because this wasn't a breakup anymore. This wasn't even betrayal. This was warfare. Subtle. Psychological. Layered in smiles and tears and contingency plans. I opened my notes app and typed a single line. To dismantle the machine, you have to find the architect. And I had just figured out who built the blueprint. I took one last breath before walking through the doors of the law office. I hadn't seen Brenna in 2 weeks. Not since that night in the diner when she'd clutched her coffee and asked me if I'd still care about the baby. Not since the box appeared on the porch. Not since I met the man in the parking lot and held that envelope of brutal, scribbled truth. I had kept my silence, for the first time not out of fear, but out of calculation. If Brenna had been building a story, I was going to let her finish it. Let her feel in control of the narrative for just a little longer. Let her think I was breaking. But I wasn't breaking. I was preparing. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming clarity. My name. My story. My ability to walk through the rest of my life without dragging her shadows behind me. When she saw me across the conference table, her expression shifted, relief, then wariness. Her lawyer introduced a proposed dissolution agreement. Terms already drafted. Financial split. A non-disparagement clause. No mention of the pregnancy. No request for discussion. She wanted a clean exit. Quick, clinical, with no mess. I slid forward my own folder. Inside, a counter document. Legally drafted. Thorough. It included all the necessary signatures to confirm I would comply with paternity testing only after the divorce was finalized. It also included a waiver that refused alimony. And most importantly, a sealed affidavit outlining everything I had on the condition that it would remain buried unless I or anyone in my family was defamed, harassed, or falsely accused of emotional harm. I watched her read it, line by line. When she reached the final paragraph, she looked up at me. Her mouth parted slightly, just enough to whisper, "You really did figure it all out." I nodded. "You didn't think I would?" "No," she said, and for the first time, her voice wasn't calm or charming or sweet. It was tired. "You were never supposed to." It was the closest thing to honesty I'd ever heard from her. The lawyers handled the rest. I walked out without looking back. But the best part came weeks later, quiet, small, almost mundane. The DNA test came in. The baby wasn't mine. It was Paxton's. I sat on the bench behind the county building, paper in hand, breeze brushing against my face like the first time I'd felt oxygen in months. And I laughed, not bitterly, not in pain, but with release, with freedom. I didn't call her. I didn't need to. That was the moment I knew I had stepped out of her story and finally back into my own. It's been 6 months now. I moved into a small rental near the river. I started volunteering on weekends, mechanical repair for single moms who can't afford garage prices. I even started therapy. Real therapy. Not the kind where I say what I think they want to hear, but the kind where I say what I need to admit. I still wake up some nights hearing her laugh. That one from behind the door. It lingers, faint, but it doesn't control me anymore. I got my peace back. And not the fake kind. Not the forgive and forget kind. The earned kind. The kind you build with your own hands, after walking through hell and choosing not to stay there. So if you're reading this, and you're where I was, lost, foggy, doubting your gut, I'll tell you what someone should have told me. You don't have to explode to walk away. You don't have to win. You just have to leave. Quietly, smartly, and with your truth intact. That's what I did. And for once, that was enough.